You know me. You know me, the world wasn't always like this. When I was a child, it was a different place. Our beautiful planet was being poisoned. Our blue skies were once filled with smoke, and our Earth's surface once covered in soot. If we hadn't been for a courageous few, the fate of mankind could have been very different. And on one historic day, they decided to become a positive force of nature, allowing the lungs of the earth to breathe freely again. That was the day the world began to save itself. That day was June the 5th, 2019.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and a very warm welcome to the World Environment Day 2019 celebrations at the UN headquarters. As you know, the World Environment Day takes place every year on the 5th of June. Since the first celebration in 1974, it has become the largest annual celebration of the environment, with millions of people joining in to leave a lasting legacy for the planet. And as we know from the IPCC 1.5 degree report and the emissions gap report, we have very little time to continue these celebrations if we don't change our behavior drastically over the next 10 years. There will be little left for any of us to celebrate, let alone the humans, but all the species. So we are at the crossroads of not just human history, but that of the planet. This year, we have chosen something that is of critical importance to the planet, air pollution, as the theme. As you know, air pollution kills about 7 million people every year. 7 million deaths. Premature deaths can be directly attributable to air pollution, of which 3.8 million happens due to domestic air pollution, which is bad cooking fuel, which is burning solid carbon, and its very many forms, whether you call it mineral coal or you call it firewood and what have you, and it affects the poor and the vulnerable in the worst possible way. It also is telling that 93% of the children in the world grow up in areas that the WHO considers toxic in terms of air quality. So in terms of the sum total of women and children and the vulnerable, air pollution affects them in the worst possible way. If we were to start an industry today, and I don't say this rhetorically, if the audience here were to be asked, I'm about to start something that's going to kill 7 million people every year, what say you? I don't think I'll get a license in any part of the world to operate. But that's exactly what it is. And we let it fester for decades, and that it has become a life-threatening emergency now. So without much ado, let me start the proceedings of the day by inviting, unfortunately, Her Excellency Maria Fernanda Espinoza Garces, the President of the 73rd Session of the General Assembly, can't be here today owing to some last-minute obligations. So Ambassador Kwabena is representing her, the chef de cabinet to the President of the General Assembly. So I invite Ambassador Kwabena to offer his remarks.
Thank you very much. Mr. Satya Tripathi, UN Assistant Secretary General and Head of the United Nations Environment Program, New York Office, Your Excellency Ms. Inga Ronda King, President of the United Nations Economic and Social Council, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and happy World Environment Day. I'm honored to read the prepared statement of the President of the 73rd session of the General Assembly, Her Excellency Maria Fernanda Espinoza. And let me start by acknowledging the young lady seated to my right, Alexandria Villaseñor, and all the young activists who have been fighting for, reversing climate change. Let me start by thanking UN Environment for organizing today's event and for the work you've done for nearly half a century now in helping member states to set the global environment agenda and in enabling people to improve their quality of life without compromising that of future generations. You have helped us all to recognize that we do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. Dear friends, since it began in 1974, World Environment Day has become the single largest global celebration of our environment each year. And there is much to celebrate. The life-sustaining power, the ingenuity and sheer beauty of our natural world are an enduring source of awe and inspiration that unites communities around the world, that connects us with generations past and future, that defines us as human beings. As Mary Brave Bird of the Lakota tribe said so well, and I quote, "The land is our mother, the rivers our blood. Take our land away and we die. But this day is always bittersweet." The recent IPBES report noted that humans have altered a staggering 3/4 of our land and 2/3 of our marine environment. Excellencies, friends, the theme of this year's World Environment Day is highly pertinent. Air pollution is nothing short of a global emergency, affecting 9 out of 10 people worldwide. It is heartbreaking that, according to the World Health Organization, 7 million people die prematurely each year from strokes, heart and lung disease brought on by air pollution. It is unacceptable that 93% of children under the age of 15 breathe air that is so polluted that it puts their health and development at risk. And there are economic implications too. According to the World Bank, air pollution costs the global economy more than $5 trillion annually in welfare costs. The OECD believes this could rise 4 or even 5-fold by 2060. Not to mention the impacts on agricultural output, food security, and nutrition. In short, air pollution is putting all of the Sustainable Development Goals at risk. Friends, the scale of the problem is immense, but we know that we can overcome it. Last year, World Environment Day focused on beating plastic pollution. We saw how small countries can make a huge impact. For example, Antigua and Barbuda was the first Caribbean country to ban plastic bags. Now the country wants to make its campaign global. That is why the government, along with Norway, UN Environment, IUCN, and National Geographic joined me in hosting the Played Out concert in Antigua last Saturday. In addition to the over 130 countries that have now implemented legislation on single-use plastics, I'm delighted that we were able to achieve a plastics-free UN headquarters starting this month as well. A strong message for leading by example. And I hope you'll join us today for the launch of the photo exhibition here at United Nations headquarters. Colleagues, friends, I am confident that we can generate similar momentum to beat air pollution this year. China, the global host of this year's World Environment Day celebrations, has demonstrated that we can tackle air pollution with concerted effort. It has made great strides forward domestically and is now a world leader on green energy, owning half the world's electric vehicles and 99% of electric buses. Air connects us all. We must act to identify synergies across the Sustainable Development Goals and address this crisis. First, we must rethink our approach. Clean air is a right, not a luxury. Our actions, policies, and laws should reflect that. From efforts to achieve SDG targets on clean fuels and technologies to protecting the quality of life of people everywhere. Emission standards, legislation, and controls on vehicles are a good place to start, as is the prohibition of the construction of new fossil fuel power plants. We must also invest in public awareness campaigns and subsidies to support clean lifestyles through public transport, green vehicles, composting, recycling, and cycling, for instance. Publishing and monitoring air quality data can go a long way here. Second, we must be prepared to make the substantive upfront investment and effort required, knowing that we'll be saving money and lives in the longer term. For instance, Britain plans to ban new petrol and diesel cars and vans from 2040 as part of a £3 billion clean air strategy. Global cost savings from the transition to sustainable energy could average $6 trillion per year by 2050. Third, we must scale up efforts building on synergies to maximize impact. The Secretary General's Climate Action Summit this September is a crucial opportunity to do so. Climate change and air pollution are intricately connected. We cannot limit warming to 1.5 Celsius without reducing short-lived climate pollutants. This offers a good basis for concrete initiatives and commitments in September and beyond. Excellencies, dear colleagues, as we mark World Environment Day, we must reaffirm that through collective efforts, we can improve productivity, save resources, and preserve fundamental human rights. Environmental action is a clear example of the urgent need for multilateralism. It is our only option. Together, we can beat plastic pollution, we can beat air pollution, and breathe renewed life into the 2030 agenda as we enter the final decade for delivery. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for highlighting those, the fact that we have to act on almost every front, and the world economy is the biggest piece of the puzzle. And we have with us Her Excellency Ambassador Inga King, the President of the 74th Economic and Social Council. May I invite you, Ambassador, to deliver your statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I am very pleased to join you today in my capacity as the President of the United Nations Economic and Social Council for the commemoration of the World Environment Day. The theme of this year's World Environment Day, air pollution, is a critical issue for the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Our global blueprint for delivering healthy lives for all, sustainable cities, universal access to clean energy, and climate action. While the issue of air pollution is specifically addressed in Target 3.9 of SDG 3 on healthy lives and well-being for all, it also has critical interlinkages with other SDGs. Improving air quality, for example, would help tackle poverty, Goal 1, reduce gender inequality, Goal 5, and fulfill targets on clean water and sanitation, Goal 6. Air pollution is a global public health challenge that threatens everyone, from unborn babies to children walking to school to women cooking over open fires. We all know that without air, there can be no life, but today, this vital resource has become an invisible killer. The pollutants that clog our lungs and seep into our bloodstreams are also accelerating climate change, threatening the health of the planet. Air pollution is intricately connected to social and economic issues. It accrues significant economic costs around the world, directly and indirectly. Air pollution causes significant damage to human health, damage that is unequally distributed across the world and affects developing countries most severely. Particularly in low and middle-income countries, air pollution is damaging our brains, making us ill, and shortening our lives. It has been linked to diabetes, increased risk of dementia, impaired cognitive development, and lower intelligence levels. Overall, air pollution is responsible for more deaths than many other risk factors, including malnutrition, alcohol use, and physical inactivity. According to the World Bank, air pollution deaths cost the global economy approximately $225 billion US. And OECD estimates that by 2060, the annual global welfare costs of premature deaths from outdoor air pollution would be 18 to 25 trillion US, with costs of pain and suffering from illness estimated at approximately 2.2 trillion US. There are other indirect effects of air pollution. Ground-level ozone is expected to reduce staple crop yields by 26% by 2030, creating food security and nutrition challenges. Air pollution also degrades materials and coatings, decreasing their useful life and generating costs for cleaning, repair, and replacement. The damaged items can also include objects of cultural significance. Of course, those costs can be alleviated with increased efforts to clean our air. Poor air quality affects a wide range of human rights, including the right to life, an adequate standard of living. Air pollution is a global issue that does not respect frontiers. It should be noted that under international human rights law, states have an obligation to cooperate in addressing environmental problems that cross national borders, including transboundary air pollution. This year, we have an opportunity to accelerate action on air pollution as envisioned in the 2030 Agenda to ensure no one is left behind. 2019 is a critical year for the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and its 17 Sustainable Development Goals. With the end of the first cycle of the High-Level Political Forum for Sustainable Development, we will complete the review of all the SDGs, and we will review our overall progress in the implementation of the 2030 Agenda at the HLPF Summit in September. Air pollution affects all of us, and we all have a role to play in keeping our air clean. The sources of air pollution are many, but if we all play our part, we can work towards eliminating the dangerous pollutants that cost lives and weaken our planet's life systems every day. Governments, cities, and private sector have critical roles. Each and every one of us can also make simple choices that reduce our own contribution to the toxins in the air. We need policies to improve air quality. We need to use alternative modes of transportation. We must reduce consumption of meat and dairy to cut methane emissions, and we must continue to educate others about the dangers of air pollution. Our solutions must be global, collective, and sustainable. Many have already made a good start, and the positive results show that. Together, we have the power to clear the air and secure a better future for ourselves, our children, and our planet. And I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ambassador, for highlighting how urgent the problem is and what the challenges are, especially in terms of the potential for damage moving forward between 18 to $25 trillion to the world economy. That's what we are staring at. And sometimes it takes a lot of courage to take the right steps, because often when we make these decisions, we are affected by something called short-termism. It's very short-term thinking. We are thinking in terms of political election cycles. We are thinking in terms of how do we get past the annual budget cycle. But the problem keeps accumulating till it becomes so big that no one can solve it any further or anymore. Unfortunately, Secretary General Antonio Guterres couldn't be with us today because he has to be at another meeting, which is extremely important for the organization. And but he has sent us a video message, and may I request that the message be played.
World Environment Day highlights how much we all rely on nature and on our planet's health. The quality of the water we drink, the food we eat, and the air we breathe all depend on protecting the natural world. But the environment is facing unprecedented perils caused by human activity. 1 million species are at risk of extinction. Oceans are under stress. Air pollution is claiming 7 million lives every year and damaging children's development. Many air pollutants also cause global warming, and climate change is an existential threat. In my recent visit to the South Pacific, I saw firsthand the severe and worsening impacts of the global climate emergency. There is no time to lose. This is the battle of our lives. We must win, and we can. Solutions exist. Tax pollution, not people. Stop subsidizing fossil fuels. Stop building new coal plants. People everywhere are demanding action. On World Environment Day, let us heed their call. Thank you.
Thank you. The Secretary General talked eloquently about his recent visit to the Pacific and the kind of horrors that are visible in terms of the pollution in the oceans. Everything is interconnected, as we've heard already, that the pollution in the oceans affect the pollution in the air, affect the pollution in land, and so it all comes back in a circular way, positively and negatively as well. And to share with us his views, we have an ocean champion today with us, Cyril, who's the founder of Parley for the Oceans. Cyril, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
To press the button there? No, on the left.
Okay, still a newbie. Thank you, Satya. Thank you to the United Nations. Thank you for having us here today. No air, no life. But that means on one side that we are fighting the creators of air. We are fighting all these animals out there in the oceans that create up to 80% of the oxygen we breathe. We cut down trees. We cut down all these wondrous species that allow us to be here without looking like a Darth Vader and wearing a gas mask. And we are polluting their life-giving resource. Without air, we can't exist really here. And when you're looking at all these environmental challenges that we are facing today, then we are looking at economic failures. And I'm a designer, I'm a creator. I worked for the industry my whole life until I stopped doing so and started Parley. But the truth is, I'm pro-business. I believe in the private sector. My whole career is molded by industry. As a creator, they gave me all the opportunities that I had. But when you're looking at how we are running business today, when we're looking at what we are creating, we're coming quickly to the assumption that all this is a big design failure. And I can blame the major companies, or I can just look into the mirror and say, as a creator, I should take this in my own hand and own the problem in my own way. And the creative community, with its technology, design, media reach, leads business into the future. And every business started with an idea. But often this idea has been overexploited or is outdated, so it needs a redesign. And plastic, we are fighting plastic for 7 years. Plastic is for us not the only problem. And yes, it sheds down, it goes into the level of like nanoparticles. It's in the air, we breathe it in. It's in the rain. It's going into our brain. It's leaching chemicals and gases off. But plastic is just a symbol of a toxic age that we need to leave behind. And it all starts with a dream, because we are driven by ideas. We're not good in doing homework. We're not good in cleaning up. We're not good in all these exercises that are so boring. We're human. We want to innovate. We want to create. We want to solve the impossible riddle. And therefore, this new economy that we need now, is it an economy of a new technology? Is it an economy of collaboration? It's excitement, because we are facing right now our own extinction. We are facing right now a nightmare that had been a dream. Back then we thought, oh, we must survive, we must create these tools. We must evolve, otherwise we are these naked creatures that can't be here. But now we mastered that part of history. We mastered planet, we formed it to our will, and we wake up in this nightmare, in fear. And this instinct of survival is triggered again. And everybody I see on this planet, everybody I meet, has that fear, has this feeling of something is dead wrong, something is broken. And therefore, we need another positive, another idea, another dream where we coexist with nature, where we learn from this high tech that surrounds us, where we create, where we innovate, where we invent. And we call this time the material revolution. And we saw what happened with digital. It was a digital revolution. It changed everything. And now material is up for redesign. We suggest at Parley a strategy, and that's why this day is so special for us, and why this topic is so special for us, air, the air we breathe. It's also the name of our strategy that we suggest, that we offer, the AIR strategy. Avoid toxic materials, intercept them, and redesign them. And we are running out of time. We're running out of time, and if I believe you, Satya, then we don't even have these 11.5 years to 2030. And that's a fantastic thought, because 10 years alone is nothing. It's nothing. We exist in 7 years. Palais exists at 7 years, and I consider us a failure because we still have the same problems. So how do we use the last 10 years? We use them by innovating. We use them by, of course, we have to change our mindsets, but technology is faster than that. And we use them by declaring purpose the new luxury. That's pretty much an invitation to collaborate, to create, and to form an alliance between the creative community, between brands, governments, intergovernment organizations, and environmentalists. Because we can only fix these things together, but we need a plan. And we need a priority list of what we have to approach in what order, so we have clear deadlines. Thank you.
Thank you, Cyril, for those inspiring words. Cyril and I were together at a workshop organized by MIT a few weeks ago by a few celebrated professors at MIT who brought us together because one of the ideas that a few of the Assistant Secretary Generals at the UN that are part of the SDG 12, the One Planet Network group we've been thinking about and working on, is that everybody talks about the big problems and the big people. And the Cokes and the Pepsis and the Nestles and the Marses of the world, but they are not the big part of the problem. They're big and they're visible and they're important, but the world also has 350 million small and medium enterprises. And in most parts of the developing world, they are 90% of the problem. And in some countries, actually 98% of the problem. So nobody's working with them, literally, barring research institutions. The International Trade Center of the UN works a lot on pilot projects, but nothing at scale. Nothing that really brings all of them together around sustainable consumption and production as the core of their thinking. And then, as Cyril pointed out, it's a design problem. Even with the best of intentions, for the products that we use today, you can only reclaim 9% of what has gone into this phone. That's despite Apple's design brilliance in terms of making the phone functional. Only 9% is what you can reclaim. Because it is not designed to be recycled. It is designed to be functional, which is useful, but it doesn't serve the cause of the planet. And I'm not singling out one particular phone because I'm using it. Every phone is like that. So the challenge before us on this World Environment Day is to think out of the box. Everything is possible. When I was a young kid, growing up, my best gift from my father was a Rubik's Cube. And he was a mathematics professor, and he told me, let's see how fast you can break the puzzle. And it took me a few days. I figured it out. After I had figured it out, he told me that actually it's 3 into 3 into 3. So it's 43 quintillion possibilities in there. What you figured out is only one. So that's what the human mind is capable of innovating, of becoming champions in our own space. And we can do that only if we think like young people, no matter how old we are. If we think like young people, we can actually imagine like them and produce wonders in terms of performance and output like them. With that, let me invite a young activist with us, Alexandra. And she has a great story to tell. I'm deeply inspired by her work. And we are so honored to have you with us, Alexandra. The floor is yours.
Hello, Hello, everyone. My name is Alexandria Villasenor, and I'm a 14-year-old climate activist living here in New York City. Since December of 2018, I've also been on climate strike every Friday, right outside here actually, in front of the United Nations headquarters, for 25 weeks now. I'm demanding climate action from world leaders. And I was inspired by 16-year-old Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg. I'm also a national and international organizer for the global climate strikes, which have occurred on March 15th and May 24th. What you may not know about me, though, is that I have asthma. I was raised in Northern California in an agricultural community. Agriculture is the #1 source of air pollution due to the methane produced by the animals. In my community, we also used open burning to clear fields before planting, which only made our air quality worse. And then there are wildfires. Personally, my climate strike story begins last November when I was visiting family back in California and the Paradise Fire broke out. It quickly became the worst wildfire in California history. 250 square miles burned, 18,000 structures burned, 87 people died, and the air quality index was 350, which is hazardous and was the worst air quality in the world. During the Paradise Fire, my parents sent me back to New York City. I was tired, sick, and really mad. That was the turning point for me to become an activist, and on December 14th of 2018, I joined Greta in her weekly strike for climate. Today is World Environment Day, and I think the most important thing for all of us to consider is the environment we are leaving future generations. The health of our climate and environment is the foundation of our personal health, our human rights, and even the health of our economy. I often tell people climate is the setting upon which we write all of the stories about our life and our society. If the setting is not working properly, then nothing else placed in front of it will work properly either. Because the climate and the environment are the most important issues of our time, we youth will continue to organize, mobilize, and take direct action to save our futures. Last week, after the May 24th global climate strike, Greta, myself, and a group of leading youth activists from all around the world called for a general climate strike. That's adults and youth on September 20th, which is the Friday before world leaders arrive in New York City for the United Nations Climate Summit. Greta will be here too, and I am really excited to meet her. Together, our massive climate strike before the UN Climate Summit is meant to send a message to the world leaders that we won't stop until action is taken to save our planet. The youth understand we need to mobilize in larger numbers than ever before in history, and that's exactly what we're planning to do. I believe that humanity has what it takes to address our current environmental and climate crisis, and I personally have a vision for the future. I see a world where human beings live in harmony with the Earth, respecting the boundaries of this planet that we call our home. I see a stable climate system where fossil fuels are kept in the ground and our emissions are zero. I see reforestation, ocean cleanup, habitat restoration, and ends to pollution, sustainable food systems, and renewable energy. I know we can make this happen if we all work together for the future of our planet. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandria. You talked about agriculture, about methane being one of the predominant sources of global warming. There's also the chemicals that we pump into agriculture literally by the hundreds of millions of tons every year. We literally pay for our destruction. And then we eat that food and we fall sick. And then we go pay the doctors and the pharma industry. So it's a perfect combination of chemical industry and the pharmaceutical industry is there to save us because we are consuming chemicals, and then we go to the hospitals. You know, the Prime Minister of New Zealand put it eloquently, talking about the false arrangements that we have for calculating GDP. And she said that if a lot of people are divorcing each other in a country, then they are all running to the lawyers, and the lawyers are making a lot of money, and the courts are running over time. That's a lot of increase in the GDP. But the country is no better for that. And listening to her, I was so inspired that finally we have world leaders that are really stepping forward and calling a spade a spade. And it's time that all member nations really stood up for the rights of children, for the rights of young people to whom we owe a better planet to bequeath to. With that, let me invite statements from member states. We have a few expressions of interest already, so I'll start with those, and then others may feel free to raise their hands. I'll start with Equatorial Guinea.
Thank you very much. We are thankful for this opportunity to participate in this important celebration on pollution on the International Day of the Environment. We believe that this is one of the major challenges today, and we understand that it's not a recent problem. But it has been going on for a while, and we need to do something about it. We believe that pollution is a risk, not only for the environment, but also for our public health. And this requires that we need to act in consequence very urgently. We believe that we only have a planet, and we must take care of it, not only for our health, but also for our own sustainable development and that of our future generations. Finding sustainable solutions is key for our collective fight against climate change. We believe that both are consequences of the model of development that we've been following, and we need to do something about this. In terms of finding new ways of attaining economic growth and sustainable economic growth for people and planet. That requires the effort and compromise of everybody, and including governments. In this regard, the Republic of Equatorial Guinea has reflected this proposition in our third National Economic Conference, the third since independence 50 years ago. The conference had as an objective to redesign, to reorientate our national development plan of economic development, and it was focused on consolidation, social equity, and economic diversification. But the conference was divided in 4 pillars, and one of the pillars was environmental sustainability. The others were poverty eradication, social inclusion and sustainable peace, and productivity and industrialization, in line with the Agenda 2063 of the African Union and Agenda 2030. With this new plan of development, Equatorial Guinea is showing our political will to explore urgent measures and effective to address climate change and adopt new models of production and consumption that are more responsible and conscious, and also implementing new solutions, innovative solutions, and engaging and working with youth in these processes. We believe that all these efforts in developing countries must be supported and complemented by efforts by industrialized countries and those countries that contaminate the most through existing mechanisms. That will show the spirit of cooperation that we all need to have and share in order to solve this problem that is global and affects everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you. May I invite the distinguished representative of the European Union to offer the remarks.
Sorry. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. And first of all, World Environment Day is always a special day and an important one, but I think this year's topic is really particularly important also from a New York perspective, because air pollution is a topic that doesn't get so much attention as other environmental issues here. So I think that is a great occasion to hear more about it, and there have been so many important things already said. I mean, the ECOSOC president pointed to so many interlinkages with other SDGs, and I think, Cyril, it was very inspiring also to hear the links you made with a new economic model we need. And I think the circular economy that we have been trying to develop, and where we really look at all the stages of an economic cycle, from a product design to the way we deal with waste management. All these issues are so much interlinked with air pollution, and much more than it seems at first glance. And it goes for everything else, from biodiversity protection to fight against climate change. And in that sense, it's also, I think, very good that air pollution and the health and climate change link gets so much attention, in particular also now in Abu Dhabi and the preparatory meeting for the climate summit, because we need to have more awareness about these interlinkages. Because I think the other very important element is this leave no one behind dimension of it, because indeed, as has been said, the most vulnerable parts of the society suffer most from air pollution. I mean, whether it's children, the elderly, those having chronic diseases, and also the poorer parts of the population. And so it's really a social dimension to this environmental problem, as to many other environmental problems, and that's something that is very important that we keep in mind and that we focus very much our efforts on. So just maybe a couple of words from how the EU is dealing with the issue. I mean, we have a commitment to halve the health impacts from air pollution by 2030. We have a lot of activities, we have a lot of legislation, so we have common standards for air quality throughout the EU. Then we have national emission reduction targets, and then we also have a lot of work with particularly pollutant industry sectors to see how we can reduce their emissions and decrease the negative impacts on health in that regard. But of course, it's not enough if we have efforts and if we make progress in the EU. It's so interlinked. It's a shared problem with all our neighbors and further on. And so it was very important from our perspective that the UN Environment Assembly, the third one, had a resolution on air pollution, and we will continue to really work very hard on getting a full implementation of this resolution. We also see it very important that the World Health Assembly is so active. I mean, this is really a problem that needs so close cooperation between UNEP and the World Health Organization, because as was said, it's a right to health, and this dimension people need to be aware of so that they can really fight for their right in that regard. And then there is a legal framework under the UNECE Air Convention, and that is now looking very much on how they can work better with others beyond the immediate parties to the convention. They have proposed to have a forum on international cooperation on air pollution, and that again is something that we very much support. So thanks again for bringing us here together. Special thanks to Alexandria with all her great commitment, and to Cyril for a very, very positive and very energetic and innovative look at problems, not just looking at all the doom ahead, but also at how we can use all the skills we have to the best of our future. Thank you.
Thank you for making that point about not talking about the doom all the time. I'm reminded of Martin Luther King Jr., who said that I have a dream. He didn't start by saying I have a nightmare, because that would not have excited anybody into action. So that is why we need the Alexandras and the Gretas of the world to excite us, because it's not difficult to think like them. We just have to stop complicating things in our mind. It is a simple situation. We have a serious problem. We need to find solutions, and we need to use them to save the world. How difficult is that? And then we bring in everything else, and we complicate it, and then we keep talking about it forever, and that's why we are where we are. I get excited when I talk about these things because I really feel that there's so much more we can do, and we don't see the problem for what it is. We just have 10 years. We've crossed the 1 degree Celsius threshold already. The 2 degrees Celsius that we talked about in the Paris Agreement, the IPCC tells us that's not good anymore. We need to revise it because the damage is happening at a much faster pace than we assessed before. That's why we need to stay at 1.5 degrees for the world not to descend into that cataclysmic abyss. And we still keep talking to no avail. We need to find the resolve within ourselves to see the fire that our homes are on and douse it with every possible solution we can bring to bear. With that, let me invite the representative of Norway to offer the remarks. Yes, please.
Thank you, Chair. First, I would like to say Eid Mubarak, happy Eid to all Muslim friends, and I wish for peaceful and joyous celebrations all over the world on this important holiday. And dear friends, gathered here in the struggle for a better environment, it's a pleasure for me to say a few words. We find that the topic for the World Environment Day is very well chosen. Not only is air pollution a major source of global warming, but it's also a global health problem. And it can sometimes feel like our individual efforts make no difference, tempting us into inaction. But important campaigns such as Breathe Life and others, they provide us with information, they give us tools and spurs us back to action. The World Environment Day provides information, inspiration and awareness. It also plays a vital role in creating much needed action. Not just by governments and industries, but by you and me and millions of other people around the world. We tend to forget that as consumers we actually have a great deal of power. One area in which we are starting to see what consumer power can actually do is the battle against plastic pollution. I would like to commend the President of the General Assembly, Ms. Espinosa, on her very successful efforts in making the UN headquarters plastic-free. And I am proud and happy to tell you that the Permanent Mission of Norway recently took similar steps and is now environmentally certified as an Eco Lighthouse office. We're very proud about this. We have implemented it's great, you know, to try to make a difference. We have implemented recycling efforts to reduce landfill waste by more than 50%, and we avoid single-use plastics in utensils. We have implemented environmentally friendly procurement procedures. So there are still many areas where we can and need to improve in order to reduce our environmental footprint even further. And I can assure you that we are working on it. We strongly encourage other UN missions to join the efforts of the UN and the President of the General Assembly. And I would like to thank UNhq and this year's Global Host China and pledge that we, on our part, will strive to do better, not just on World Environment Day, but every other day of the year as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Norway, for walking the talk. I've had the privilege of collaborating with colleagues in Norway on the RED program and very many other programs, and I can say with some authority, having collaborated for decades, that I find the partnership empowering, enabling, and meaningful. Thank you for that. Let me invite now the permanent representative of Kenya. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Tripathi. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I also take this opportunity to join delegations in thanking you for organizing this event to celebrate the World Environment Day on the theme air pollution. This theme not only resonates well, but is also in line with Kenyan's environment policies and efforts towards fighting pollution. It touches on our aspirations for the present and future of human generations whose impending trajectory is being threatened by pollution. As a result, it is not possible to speak about air pollution without stating the importance of oceans and forests, as they are the lungs through which the atmosphere breathes, and they help us to eliminate carbon dioxide or reduce carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, giving us cleaner and fresh air to breathe. In this regard, human interactions and survival of mankind is inextricably linked to our relationship with the environment. That is why we have to protect it for this generation and generations to come. As the late Nobel Prize winner from Kenya, Professor Wangari Maathai, said, and I quote, "Mother Nature is very generous, but very unforgiving if you destroy nature, for nature will destroy you." Our current trends of consumption and production, if unchecked, will not be sustainable. There are more respiratory diseases today emanating from air pollution and the state of our environment than there was a couple of decades ago. Car emissions, or chemicals from factories, sand, and dust storms contribute significantly to air pollution and increase in temperatures. WHO indicates that about 7 million people die every year due to air pollution, out of which 3.8 million are caused by cooking with polluting fuels and technologies. This indeed is a matter of great concern to us, especially what we can be able to avoid or reduce. As a result of this detrimental issue, the government of Kenya's moved to tackle this crisis with the tougher air quality regulations in 2015 Amendment on the Environment Management and Coordination Act of 1999. But we also brought into force in 2017 the ban of single-use plastics, which initially had resistance, but subsequently our own people embraced it, and the advantages, positive advantages, are seen, well embraced now by the people themselves. We must therefore take steps to conserve energy and continue in the pursuit towards energy-efficient power generation, strive for net zero carbon emission, improve access to clean and affordable fuels, improve waste management systems, and the like, to ensure that we strive for the future we want. We can only achieve this if we work together. In conclusion, Kenya is extremely proud to host the only United Nations headquarters in the Global South, which is home to the United Nations Environment Program, and we should continue to support this important program that is responsible for one of the most crucial possessions to mankind, and that is our environment. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ambassador. Kenya has been a magnificent host to the UN family in Africa, especially the headquarters of UNEP and UN Habitat, and also been a thought leader in this space with the ban on single-use plastic. And I would also like to recognize India for its leadership in introducing the resolution at UN Environment Assembly, working with other countries on phasing out single-use plastic, and the steadfast leadership of Prime Minister Modi in not only announcing a ban on single-use plastic, completely phasing it out by 2022 in India on the occasion of last World Environment Day, but following it up with significant action over the last year. So congratulations to India for that. I would now like to invite the distinguished delegate from Slovakia. I don't see that. So let me move on to the distinguished delegate from Kyrgyzstan.
Yes, please.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to express gratitude to the organizers of this very important event dedicated to the World Environment Day. Kyrgyz Republic fully understands the scale of negative impact on human health and the damage of air pollution that inflicts to fragile ecosystems of our countries. Especially to fragile mountains ecosystems in such countries like Kyrgyzstan. Taking into account that about more than 90% of my country's territory are mountains, you can imagine the scale of the negative impact of the air pollution. At the same time, despite these challenges that our geographic trait, at the same time, it opens the great prospects for development of, for example, clean and green sources of energy, such as hydropower. It is widely known that hydropower is one of the most clean source of energy, which does not demand to burn tons of coal and other fossil fuels. And as you know, Kyrgyzstan is one of the Central Asian country which has a big hydropower potential together with Tajikistan. And together with Tajikistan, Afghanistan and Pakistan, we are developing the ambitious regional project CASA 1000, a regional project on export of energy, mostly generated by hydropower stations of Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, which will be exported to Afghanistan and Pakistan. This project potentially can prevent additional greenhouse emission, which is inevitably accompany energy generation in every country. Speaking of the fragile mountain ecosystem, we would like to inform that Kyrgyzstan is very active in promotion of different international initiatives in this field. Particularly Kyrgyzstan, with wide support of member states, presented the initiative to declare December 11 as the World as International Mountain Day, which was accepted by the United Nations. This day, together with the World Environment Day, in our view, gives very positive contribution to cooperation development and on ecological issues between countries and international organizations. Also, concerning contribution to solution of different ecological problems, we would like to underline such important issue as neutralization of threat from uranium tailings containing radioactive waste in Kyrgyzstan and other countries of Central Asia. This uranium tailings is remained in our country since Soviet times, and intensive erosion processes, which is accompanied especially by air, especially by polluted air, which causes a significant danger to the additional water pollution and threatens to the health of the population. So in this regard, as an important contribution to solution of this problem, Kyrgyzstan, in wide support of the member states, adopted the resolution, the role of international community in the prevention of the radiation threat in Central Asia in December 2018. The fact that this resolution was supported by more than 40 countries shows the understanding of importance of environment protection issues, especially specific issues like air pollution, radiation pollution, and the aspiration of the member states to develop cooperation in this dimension and other dimension. We would like to once again announce our commitment to develop and strengthen cooperation with all between member states and the UN institution in issues of overcoming the negative effects of air pollution, of water pollution, radiation threat, and to increase the resilience of mountain ecosystems as important contribution to environment protection, international cooperation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. May I now invite the distinguished delegate from Nigeria. Maybe they have stepped out. Let me move on to inviting the delegate from Mongolia. Okay, so let me move on to the delegate from Costa Rica. Yes, please. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor. Thank you very much for the panelists. It's a real pleasure to have you here and to listen to all your experience. Costa Rica is pleased to participate in this year's celebration of the World Environmental Day and to join the call to action for beat air pollution. We would like to take this opportunity to thank UN Environment and China for the organization of this event and for shining a light on one of the most significant environmental problems of our time, air pollution. The silent killer is the fifth largest mortality risk factor in the world, especially for newborns and children, as you have said already, Mr. President. Just in Costa Rica, 50% of deaths are related to air, water, or soil pollution. In 2017, in a study for the Tropical Agricultural Research and Teaching Center in Costa Rica, the CATI, identified twice the limit of PM10 particles recommended by the World Health Organization in the greater metropolitan area. According to their calculations, if the particle concentration increased by 10 micrometers per cubic meter, child mortality, bronchitis, and asthma, as suffered by Alexandria, will increase. On the contrary, if the particles were reduced to the recommended limit of 20 micrometers per cubic meter, the CATI found that over $70 million could be saved in treatment and hospitalization costs, and that have saved lives. If we saved those lives, we would have 185 million of economic impact. This kind of data is crucial for decision making, which is why our Ministry of Health, the National University, and Recope, which is our national petroleum company, have joined forces to install air quality monitoring system. These systems will provide health authorities with information to alert the population of spikes in particle concentrations that could be especially harmful, as well as allow traffic officers to reroute vehicles to decongest this area. Campaigns such as Carbon Neutral Country Program and the Ecological Blue Flag Program recognize individual actions such as switching appliances in favor of high energy efficiency, less pollutant refrigerants or fluorescents, and reducing fossil fuel consumption by vehicles, since the transportation sector is the principal source of pollution, as well as Costa Rica's main challenge to achieving NDCs. With that in mind, the President Alvarado presented the National Decarbonization Plan to 2018-2050, which established a timeline to rewire the economy around our clean, renewable electric energy matrix and separate economic growth, and fossil fuel consumption for good. It contemplates fiscal and social incentives for electrical cars, the creation of a countrywide network of fast-charge electric stations, and a revitalized public transport system. Household and business energy efficiency, waste management, and sustainable, walkable, and physical cities are also part of the means envisioned to reduce greenhouse gases and therefore air pollution as well. For 70 years, Costa Rica, we have strived to protect our natural resources and bringing conservation to the forefront of our policies. Around the world, Costa Rica is known for its preserved ecosystem as a hot spot for millions of species. Nevertheless, climate change, vulnerability to climate disasters, and pollution are seriously affecting the progress we have made in reforestation and regeneration of those ecosystems. As an economy largely based on sustainable tourism, we cannot afford to lose that which makes Costa Rica pura vida, our biodiversity. Fortunately, our own biodiversity is also the key to combating air pollution. Various studies have found that vegetation is capable of absorbing large quantities of pollutants and emissions, functioning as a 24-hour filter. Increasing tree coverage in cities as carbon sinks, botanical biofilters, and living walls are examples of nature-based solutions that are not only cost-effective, but also drivers for improved mental health and ecosystem services, as habitat and food for the disastrously dwindling insect and bird species. Indeed, Costa Rica remains deeply connected to defending and guaranteeing the right of every person to a healthy and ecological balanced environment as we enshrined in our Constitution. But we are also aware that this can only be done with environmental education and multi-actor partnerships. So we also take advantage on this celebration to call for further collaboration within the international community to support the use of natural-based solutions for clean air and clean energy, to help all our countries achieve our collective goal with regard to sustainable development and the welfare and prosperity of our current and future generations. Last but not least, Mr. President, I wanted to share with Cyril something that we in Costa Rica, more and more we are working on that, is that to move to a green economy, to fight against climate change, which is mean to take care about the environment, is a very good business, and I think that this is the way that we have to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much for making that point, because a lot of people think there is no business case for the environment. And Costa Rica's example is the perfect rebuttal of that argument, that actually protecting your environment is good business, not just from a commercial perspective, but also from a national perspective. Costa Rica's economy has only grown, not reduced, while it has protected its environment in every possible manner. And there's everything to learn from Costa Rica in that and so many other areas. Thank you so much. May I now invite the distinguished delegate from Ecuador.
Thank you very much. My name is Norman Ray. I am the Minister President of the Government Council of the Special Regime of Galapagos. I'm talking right now as a representative of my province in Ecuador. Not necessarily as a representative of the country, but I'm pleased of being here. It's an honor for us to have the chance to say some words in the World Environmental Day. As you know, Galapagos and other islands are like dam water of the sea. What is happening with Galapagos right now is that close to 80% of all the plastic waste that arrive to the islands comes from the continent. So people in Galapagos, day by day, with their hands and with their backs, make cleanups of the coastlines of the islands and also in the submarine areas. And the last 3 years, we collect more than 20 tons of plastic waste, most of them bottles, that came around the world, many from South America and some of Asia too. So I want to invite you, because we are supporting an idea of a global commitment against the single-use plastic. We banned them in Galapagos since 2016, supporting circular economy and a new plastic economy. We believe that this is strategic to not only for Galapagos, for all the island ecosystems around the world. And we need to support and to ask to the private sector that they have to invest a lot amount of money in innovation around all the product chain to generate really real impact in favor of or to prevent the impact of waste and plastic in the sea. So we need a strong commitment of the private sector. I believe that if we don't have it, it will be impossible. 3 weeks ago, we went to Punta Rocafuerte, that is in the south part of Isla Santa Cruz. And we were there, we were working for an hour and a half in a cleanup of the coastline. After an hour and a half of work, we have close to 15 bags of this big, only of bottles. And what was strange is that in the same, well, not strange, what really happened is that 2 weeks before that day, they were working in the same place, other people of Galapagos collecting the same bottles, other bottles. So it all is coming, day by day, things are going on. So we really need a strong commitment of private sector, government and communities. People of Galapagos is doing their work, for sure, but we need to connect. And this is what we want to say to the world. We need to promote a global commitment between continents and island states. We need to say to the people, all of us sitting here, the way that we manage our waste, the way we decide or take decisions about our plastic that we use, have an incredible impact in the life of people many kilometers far away of your cities, of our cities. Cities in Ecuador, cities in Peru, in Colombia, Costa Rica, Panama, and also in Asia and also in Europe. So if we can find the way to work together, thinking that our decision impacts day by day in the life of nature, in the life of people, in the island ecosystems, I believe if we have this deep sense of responsibility, we have an opportunity, for sure. And we are open to support that. Please come to Galapagos. Let's work together from there and send a really strong message to the world that we want to save the life of nature, of a natural world heritage as Galapagos, because it's an example, a real interesting example, as other ones around the world, of what we can do, for sure, to prevent and to generate the big responsibility of what we are doing in our cities around the world with island ecosystems. Thank you very much.
Thank you for highlighting how circular the world is. It's not just round in shape, but it's everything that goes around comes around. And no matter how much you clean up your beaches, you'll never be able to clean it up, because we in the other parts of the world keep throwing plastic bottles into the ocean that will keep coming back to your shores. So that is how the entire planet is interconnected, and that is exactly why we need to act together to save the planet. We're getting to the close of the event today, but we have two more speakers, the distinguished delegate from Turkey, as well as then we'll close that with Wendy Diamond, who's the founder and CEO of the Women Entrepreneurship Day organization. As you know, there's a day that celebrates women entrepreneurs around the world in more than 100 countries. And so she's here with us, so she'll say a few words of inspiration. So let me invite the distinguished delegate from Turkey. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's working.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. It's encouraging to see that this event has become a strong global platform for public outreach since 1974. This year's theme, air pollution, is particularly relevant as carbon emissions have risen for 2 years in a row now. Accelerated awareness and action is needed to reduce air pollution and to leave a clean and safe environment for future generations. Today we're confronted with environmental challenges that urgently require intensified international cooperation. The adverse effects of desertification, drought, soil degradation, extreme weather events and air pollution are increasingly felt in every aspect of social and economic life. They undermine the ability to achieve sustainable development. There is no doubt that climate change has a multiplier effect on these environmental challenges. Turkey's efforts to combat these challenges continue with a broad perspective of advancing sustainable development efforts. In this way, we have put into effect credible national action plans. To give but few examples, we adopted the National Waste Management Action Plan and introduced the Zero Waste Project, which aims at recycling 35% of the total waste. We also committed to set up zero waste management systems in the Turkish seas at the Ocean Conference that was held last year in Bali. Today, Turkey's installed capacity of renewable energy is more than 45% of the total capacity, a figure which makes Turkey the leader in its region. The share of renewable energy in primary energy supply of Turkey is higher than the OECD average. Our overall target is decreasing primary energy consumption to 14% by 2023. Mr. President, we fully support the remarks by the distinguished permanent representative of Kenya. In fact, together with Kenya, Turkey has undertaken the co-leadership of infrastructure, cities and local action track of the UN Secretary General's Climate Action Summit, which will take place this September. The focus of our work is on low carbon and resilient infrastructure, transport and buildings in particular. These two sectors account for 75% of the world's energy and emit 50 to 60% of the world's total greenhouse gases in cities. They necessitate strong commitments from national governments and also the private sector. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, dear friends, cities are where the climate action battle will be fought, and we will do our best to bring transformative initiatives to the SG's Climate Action Summit in this September, which is a very important milestone in that struggle. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you for highlighting the contribution of cities to the global economy. And also the other side of the same coin, that it is also home to most of the air pollution that we see in terms of industrial emissions and transport emissions, and of course the energy inefficiency that goes with it. In the developed world itself, you could have as much as 50% of the buildings that need to become more energy efficient. So that's a very important track for the Secretary General's Climate Summit. That brings me to something that is less talked about, but needs to be, about the productivity of women. Women produce about 65% of the economic output of the world, but get paid about 10% in terms of real economic wages. And of course that includes how much effort my mother put in to bring us up, and that was never calculated as part of anybody's GDP. But without her, I wouldn't be here today. So, and that gives me great pleasure to invite Ms. Diamond, who's the founder and chair of the Women Entrepreneurship Day organization. You might wonder, there are women entrepreneurs, why do you need to have a day? I think it's extremely important to celebrate women entrepreneurs, the entrepreneurial spirit in women, if not necessarily just those that manufacture and produce things. So, Ms. Diamond, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Woohoo! Thank you, Satya, United Nations Environmental Program, and everybody here who has taken the time to bring awareness to the importance of World Environment Day. Oh, sorry, thanks. Anyways, I'm Wendy Diamond. I founded Women's Entrepreneurship Day organization in 2013 to bring governments, business leaders, and civil society together to collaborate to find solutions to uplift women in business. After volunteering in Honduras to support impoverished women with microloans. And what I learned on that experience is that 90% of the money that these women earn educate their children and provide for their families. When children are educated, they understand the importance of the environment and climate change and how we need to support them. Uplifting women is choosing environmental health. It's also Mother Earth's future begins with empowering our mothers. Transforming air quality and our environment can be accomplished with supporting women entrepreneurs in emerging markets and globally. Let's celebrate World Environment Day by supporting women and girls globally. Thank you so much and congratulations.
Thank you so much. That brings us to the end of the World Environment Day celebrations at UN headquarters today. I know that we have amongst us a lot of young people that have come from different parts of the world, different parts of the US. And so thank you for being here today. Thank you for being the inspiration, because as I have mentioned and many speakers have mentioned today, that we need the energy of the youth to drive the change that we all want to see and keep striking. It's very important. Thank you.